In this video, I'll be going over the top 10 most sought after Pokemon through trading in Pokémon GO. Every single one of the Pokemon listed in this video are some of the most commonly requested Pokemon when it comes to trades. This is due to the fact that most of them have extreme rarity, or they are highly useful in raids and PvP. If you were ever wondering what Pokemon you should stock up for trade value, then every single one of these are what you should save in your collection. While every player has specific goals when it comes to this game, more often than not, you will come across someone who is looking for any of these Pokemon. Thus, if you are looking to have the upper hand with trades, then make sure you collect these Pokemon in bulk whenever you can get them. Be aware that a majority of these Pokemon are not easy to get, so make sure you take every opportunity to catch them whenever they are available. All of the Pokemon on this list are not in any particular order, but there are certainly a handful that will be more sought after over others, so do keep that in mind. Alright, so now that I got that out of the way, let's now jump into the list. And coming in at the top of our list, we have none other than Shiny Meltan. This is one of those Pokemon that is an obvious inclusion to a list like this. Shiny Meltan is a mythical shiny that not a lot of players have, but would desperately want. By the nature of how it was released, it is quite a rare shiny, as it was only available for a limited amount of time and it required you to utilize the mystery box item. On top of that, Melmetal, the evolved form of Meltan, is a very useful Pokemon for both raid battles and the Go Battle League. Even the non-shiny version of Meltan is asked for in trades pretty often, thus the shiny is quite valuable. If you are lucky enough to have a bunch of shiny Meltan, definitely hold on to them because they could net you a really good trade. Coming in next on this list is any legendary with exclusive moves. The most common ones out of these include Lugia with Aeroblast, Ho-Oh with Sacred Fire, and Moltres with Sky Attack. These special Pokemon are typically among the best for raids, gym battles, and the Go Battle League. They are also extremely uncommon considering how they all had limited releases. While you could just use an Elite Charge TM or Elite Fast TM for these moves, it's much easier and less resource intensive to just get one through trades. Plus, in most cases, you will want lower IVs for these Pokemon in order for them to be optimized for PvP. Thus, it's pretty common for players to ask for any of these Pokemon in trades. Next up, we have the regional Pokemon from the New Zealand area, and it is, of course, Relicanth. Now, out of all of the regional Pokemon in the game, Relicanth is by far the most sought after, and that is of course because of its rarity. It doesn't necessarily have any sort of relevance in raids or PvP, but it is quite the collector's item. There haven't been that many instances where this Pokemon was available outside of its region, thus it will be quite rare to find any player outside of that region who will have these en masse. But if you happen to come across someone from the New Zealand area, or if you happen to travel there, then make sure you grab this special Pokemon. Next, let's talk about another group of Pokemon, and it is pseudo-legendary Pokemon that have not yet received a community day. These include 3 at the time that I recorded this video: Changmo-O, Exu, and Gumi. Since most of these Pokemon are extremely rare, most players will be looking for any of these Pokemon for trades. This is because it is pretty certain that they will get a community day in the future, thus plenty of players will want to stock up on high IVs of these Pokemon for when they eventually do get that community day, so that they have a bunch saved up for their exclusive moves. Next up on this list is going to be none other than Shiny Rayquaza. Among all of the shiny legendaries that are currently released, Shiny Rayquaza has got to be the most popular. This Pokemon is extremely powerful for raid battles and gym battles, thus the most serious of players are always looking for high IV versions of this Pokemon. Of course, the shiny form is going to exponentially add value to that trade. Not only is it fairly rare compared to other shiny legendaries, but it is probably one of the coolest looking shiny forms in Pokémon GO. Without question, it is a fan favorite that often gets requested in trades. I can't tell you how often I get asked for Shiny Rayquaza whenever I do lucky trades. Without question, there are always going to be players looking for the Shundo of this Pokemon. This is why it is included on this list. Now, the second regional to make this list is going to be Tropius. Like Relicanth, Tropius currently resides in a region where very few people visit. Therefore, it is extremely valuable to get as many of these Pokemon as possible whenever you can get them. The thing that separates this Pokemon apart from Relicanth, however, is just how useful it is in the Go Battle League. It has the type combination of Grass and Flying, which synergize really well. There were a couple of instances where Tropius was available to a lot of players. It was a featured Pokemon for a couple of Safari Zones, and it was one of the special spawns during Pokemon Go Fest 2022. Nevertheless, not a whole lot of players have this Pokemon in their collection, and the ones who do are probably looking for one that has optimal IVs for the Go Battle League. Thus, it is quite common that players who are serious about battling would be looking for this Pokemon in trades. Now, another Pokemon that gets requested for trades that also has value in the Go Battle League are the Halloween exclusives, which includes Yamask, Galarian Yamask, and Phantom. The evolved form of all three of these Pokemon are extremely powerful in the Go Battle League. Getting them, however, is quite difficult outside of the yearly Halloween event. Since getting specific IVs for these Pokemon are ideal for PvP, players will often look for these Pokemon in trades. Also keep in mind that Phantom has a 200 candy cost to evolve, which gets bypassed when traded. Thus, for anyone who is looking to get the evolved form Trevenant but don't have enough candy, then you could probably get some extra value trading them a Phantom. Also note that Phantom is one of the Pokemon that spawns from your daily adventure incense, so it's not as difficult to get compared to the rest of the Pokemon on this list. In fact, you might be sitting on a bunch of them right now. The best thing you can do is to offer them up to battlers for some other premium Pokemon. You could most certainly get a lot of valuable trades out of them. Alright, next up, we have all of the various unknowns. In case you didn't know, getting the Platinum Unknown medal requires you to collect every single letter of Unknown, including the question mark and exclamation mark. It's also one of the most valuable shiny Pokemon in the game as well. You will likely come across several instances where someone will be looking for specific unknowns. Chances are, you will have the one they are looking for if you've attended most events where unknowns were spawning. I always try to keep several copies of every single letter because I've always been asked for these Pokemon during lucky trades. I highly suggest you do the same because every one of those unknowns could be traded for a Pokemon that you've been looking for. Okay, we've now reached the last two entries on this list, and it turns out both of them are the same Pokemon, just different variations of them. The second to the last entry on this list is going to be Shiny Mewtwo. By my experiences, Shiny Mewtwo seems to be the one Pokemon I get requested the most with lucky trades. This is of course because this Pokemon is probably one of the best for just about every area of Pokemon Go. Of course, getting a Shundo Mewtwo is the dream for pretty much every Pokemon Go player. Collecting as many of these shinies as you can will probably net you whatever trade you want. It's definitely one you should stock up whenever it is in raids, considering just how often people are looking for this Pokemon. It would most certainly be a good idea if you're looking for the best trade value. Alright, finally, we get to the final entry on this list. This one might surprise you, but it is going to be none other than Armored Mewtwo. Now I mentioned earlier that all of the entries on this list are not in any particular order. That is definitely true for the final Pokemon listed here. But do not underestimate just how valuable for trades Armored Mewtwo is. This Pokemon is really rare by legendary standards. That is because it has had very few releases into Pokemon Go, as it only appeared in raid battles during a handful of niche events. It is technically an event exclusive from several years ago, which means newer players will likely not have it. Regardless, it is a very strong Pokemon for the Ultra League and Master League of the Go Battle League. Plenty of players who are looking to get ahead in PvP will seek out this Pokemon, and will trade pretty much whatever you want for it. If it ever happens to make a return to Pokemon Go, then I highly suggest you raid as much as you can in order to stock up. Okay, there you have it. These were the top 10 most sought after Pokemon through trades in Pokemon Go. Now, if you've ever used any of these Pokemon for a really good trade, let me know in the comments section below. Also, let me know if there is a Pokemon that you frequently use or ask for in trades that I did not include on this list. Let's have a great discussion. And if you enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you stay notified on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, then do consider checking out the links in the description below. But yeah, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.